Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, the home for movie news, reviews, and movie fan views, the podcast from movie fans for movie fans. And ladies and gentlemen, it is our 100th episode. Yeah! All right. And in honor of our 100th episode, I am joined by special guest hosts. So now we're going to go around and I will introduce our special guest hosts. We have the man who has such a movie mind that he has his own cut of the Superman movies, Steve Glerum. Hello. And we have the man who's annoying to watch movies that took place in New York City with because he's been there, Dave Dixon.
That's right.
Making her Film for Fans podcast debut, the woman who is excellent to stand in line for hours and hours and hours outside of Star Wars premieres, Abby Dixon.
That's me.
Yes. And the man who will say very little, but will be there anyway.
And maybe asleep by the end of this podcast.
And be asleep by the end of the podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
Jason Dixon.
And it's also strong.
Time. Let's get this going.
Also strongly opinionated.
Yes. So we've got a great crew and we've got a great episode for you. We're going to do a little bit of Film for Fans trivia to kick off the episode. And then we're going to get into some roundtable discussions where we're going to discuss everything from memorable movie experiences to how we fix DC. So it should be fun.
Got it. I got it figured out. But go ahead.
Okay. All right. If anyone on here does, it's us. All right. So let's get rolling. First off, let's start with a little bit of Film for Fans trivia. Since this is our 100th episode, we've got to look back a little bit. Rob may know some of the answers to this. The rest of it's probably blind guesses for the rest of you, but we'll have fun with it. Does anyone have a guess as to when our very first podcast episode that went on the podcast feed was recorded? I say recorded. I say recorded because it took a while for them to actually populate the first episode to populate all over the various podcast platforms. But
and it only took
have a guess.
It only took about 6 years in the planning before the first episode was recorded. Also.
Anyone have a guess? When do you think our very first episode was recorded?
Recorded.
Yeah, that's
so. I'm gonna go with. I'm trying to remember because you sent it to me in a MP3 file when it was first being put together.
Yeah, you were early test.
Oh man, so that would have been like summer 2019.
Okay,
right? Yeah,
summer 2019 is your guess.
I mean, I think I know anyway that it came on to all the apps during COVID, I believe, because you had me listen to the first one just to make sure, all your audio and all that was good.
Mm-hmm.
But recorded, that I don't know. I was not going to say as early as summer 2019. I was going to say like later than that, like maybe fallish 2019.
Yeah, are you looking for dates? I mean, we just went with seasons because we're
so far. All right.
I'm going to use what other people have already said and just build on that.
There you go.
Because like Jay was saying, it was like a terrible time to start a film podcast. I remember thinking that because it was like everything was shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
So it was either 2020 or 2021. I'm going to go 2020 because there's 52 weeks in a year. And you guys have been pretty consistent with your, weekly thing. So I'm going to go 2020. Summerish.
I like that. He's just taking a whole. He's taking a whole year.
Yeah, he's taking a whole approach. Rob, do you know what the answer to this is?
My guess is September 2020.
The first recorded episode was July 20th, 2020.
Oh, there we go.
Oh man.
Wow.
I thought one of you two would get this because I told you about the podcast at your birthday party for your 30th birthday in Cape May.
Oh my God.
That's when I told you guys about the podcast. So I thought one of you would come up with it and get it.
Well, see that, I mean, but what got me was recorded.
Well, we recorded it and put it up the same week.
Oh, okay.
It just took like days to populate across the
I gotcha.
first episode. It took a while for it to get.
Man, well, I will never forget that now. Right?
Yeah.
Well, great.
30th
great.
birthday.
Yeah.
All right. So now that you have the time frame established, July 2020, late July 2020, can you guess any of the content from the first episode?
Oh man, I remember listening to it.
July 2020.
Yeah.
So Tenet was probably on there. Of course, COVID was probably on there.
I remember you introduced yourself.
And I bet you Top Gun was on there too, because it probably, I think it was somewhere around there. Top Gun got delayed again.
Any other guesses as to the content?
Snyder Cut? Did that make? No, that was later.
All right. Rob,
Ryan released his tagline at the beginning of the show, which was better than mine. It was like, well, we spent 6 years talking crap by ourselves, so we might as well have somebody else listen to it.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the rundown of the first episode. Tenet delayed indefinitely. It was right after Tenet got delayed indefinitely, which we thought meant forever, and it only meant like a month and a half. But at that time, it was a very somber, sad note.
Well, as the
it felt like
unofficial
forever.
Christopher Nolan podcast, that was a really bad way to start out the podcast.
Yeah. Now this one is interesting because it just came to fruition. We talked about the Netflix announcement of The Gray Man.
Oh,
Yeah, which just actually came out very recently.
Yeah.
So we talked about that one being announced. We reviewed The Old Guard on Netflix.
Oh yes. Yeah. Charlie
And then we had a segment we did on drive-in movie theaters.
Oh yeah,
that makes
because
sense.
of COVID. Yeah.
Because of COVID, they were still operating and doing really well.
Mhm.
And so we did a segment on drive-in movies, and then we finished up with the 12th anniversary of The Dark Knight.
I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that was the content from our first episode. Here's one that you guys should be able to answer. How often have each of you been on the podcast?
How often?
Never.
Abby's got the first one
I
right.
say- I
Yes,
think she
this is
wins.
number one.
How
This-
often?
Yes. How many
I
times
think
have
I-
each of you been on?
I think I've been on like 4 or 5 times because I guest hosted an episode when Rob wasn't there one time, and I've done a couple specials. We did the Snyder Cut one all together, did the Tenet one,
James Bond as well.
yeah, the Bond one we did. So yeah, it's like 4 or 5.
5 for you. Yep. So very good.
Are
Very
you
good.
counting this episode?
I did not count this episode,
Okay.
so yes.
Then I've been twice for the Snyder Cut and James Bond.
Yep, that's correct.
All right. I was Snyder Cut, our superhero Christmas episode, and I don't think I made it on the Tenet or the Dune or anything like that. So I think I'm just going to go with 2.
Correct. You have been on twice.
I think I've been on 94 times.
Wait, does that mean there's been 6 without you?
No, there have not.
How many?
Rob's count is 101 because he missed most of the instant reaction ones, but he did get one of them in there, 1 or 2, and then we did another random one in there. So Rob's count is 101.
That's pretty good for 100 episodes to be on 101.
Yeah, we actually have 103 up on our podcast
Hmm.
feed, and yeah, because of some of the instant reactions. This one's more of an inside joke. How many times have we mentioned Nicolas Cage on the podcast?
Ooh, have you
I
counted?
did not actually look this one up.
I was gonna say, have you counted this? Because
That'd be impressive research if you went through it.
I was gonna say, I mean,
Who have we
Yeah.
mentioned more, Nicolas Cage or Christopher Nolan? That's what I want to know.
That's a tough battle, Christopher Nolan or Nicolas Cage, as to who was on the podcast more. I just approximated approximately 80 episodes featured a line about Nicolas Cage.
Wow.
Fair.
We really need a Christopher Nolan movie with Nicolas Cage in it. Let's make this happen.
Yes, that'd be fantastic.
Wow. The that might literally be the end.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it might be the end. All right, so let's get into some questions here. So the first one I thought we'd start off with is most memorable movie theater experience. What sticks out in your mind as one of your most memorable experiences being at a movie theater? Does anyone want to go first on this one?
Well, I have one.
First.
Okay,
Oh,
Abby.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Abby.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Well, so when you introduced me, you said, me as the lady that will stand in line for hours for Star Wars movies, which is true. And at one, I knitted a scarf while standing in line for my mother-in-law for Christmas, and I finished the entire thing.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
See, that's probably the most beneficial thing that came from standing in
Yeah.
those lines.
True.
Yeah, my
that's-
attempts to macrame an owl in line for Star Trek Into Darkness were a miserable failure. So,
Who is Glerum? Glerum, you were next.
Yeah. The Matrix. I just
Okay.
remember going out in the parking lot and just my mind being blown. Like it was like no movie I'd ever seen before. I feel like people that like haven't seen it that would go back wouldn't quite appreciate how different and like it just amazing it was for its time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Groundbreaking at the time.
Yeah.
I had a very similar experience with Inception when I walked out of the theater, and hearing people around me talking about it as we walked out of the theater too was a very similar feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of my most memorable movie theater experiences doesn't involve the actual movie. One time, Ryan and I and a few others, I can't remember who was there because this was back in college, but we went to see Spider-Man.
Yes.
It was 3.
I
My
think it
mind's
was
blanking now. It was 2 or 3. But anyway, these guys came dressed up no, it was definitely 3 now, because the guys came dressed up as Spider-Man and Venom. And they chased each other around the theater, like shooting things at each other.
This is before they kept you outside. At the midnight releases, they used to just let you into the theaters and you'd sit in the theater for an hour and a half.
So we're sitting in there. And if you remember like the design of the old theater, there was like the thing where you walked out and then you turn and walk up the stadium. But remember they had like that little like place where you walked out. Well, there were chairs behind that. So the Spider-Man guy climbs up on the wall, and the Venom guy, like, I don't remember, like he like shot him with something or whatever. And the guy falls off the thing, like down, like, I mean, we're talking like a story high worth of like,
it was at least 10
onto the ground. And then like everyone in the theater is like, he just fell.
And he disappeared because none of us can see him at that point.
You can't see him. You didn't hear him hit the ground because it was too loud. And then he runs out. And it was like, and like,
the whole theater's like,
what is going on? But yeah, it was nuts. I mean, like, it was like a moment of like, did that just happen? Is that guy dead? And then he came running out. It was crazy.
Yeah,
It was the real Spider-Man.
Yeah,
he was.
So
I would not have expected Spider-Man 3 to be anybody's answer for this.
Spoiler alert incoming for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it can be argued how good these movies are depending on who you are, what you like in movies. But I think one thing that is undeniable about them is the collective experience they have provided for people. I think some of my most memorable moments in a movie theater have been watching Marvel movies. There are a couple things that stand out to me. One, when Tony Stark says, "I am Iron Man" at the end of Iron Man, that was a moment. And then when the Black Panther disappeared when the snap happened, that I've honestly, I don't think I've ever felt a theater be more like somber or like, and it's a like comic book movie that people were genuinely like devastated, and you could feel it in the room. It was crazy. And then in the end of the phase, when Captain America caught Thor's hammer, the sound of like just joy and like excitement I heard in the theater, because I watched that opening night, and the sound was it was just something. It was cool to be a part of those moments.
Very cool. Jason, what do you got?
Oh man, there's so many. Of course, I remember the Force Awakens. That was cool.
Yeah.
300 back in college when we weren't allowed to go see movies, so we all like snuck out to go see that. That was great. Another one that comes to mind is that scene in Casino Royale where Daniel Craig is sitting there like naked in the chair, and he's swinging that thing. It hits him right in the crotch, and the whole theater, like every guy in there was like, "Oh, that cracks me up every time." So, definitely those for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care where you are. The first time you see that scene as a guy, you're like, oh.
Well, I think it's funny because when someone says most memorable, like you bring it up, and then like even it's like you can still feel it. Like,
I'm going to go into slightly more detail on the 300 one because if we remember on this one, we had to go to King of Prussia for the midnight IMAX premiere, and there was like 10 of us who went. And then because it was late enough in the campus curfew, nobody could get back into campus. So everyone went to my parents' house, and we're all sleeping on the floor of like my parents' house, some in the basement, some in the living room. And I just remember I'm trying to sleep because we're getting like 2-3 hours sleep. And my parents' dog is just going all over the kitchen floor with his claws. And I could not get to sleep because he was just running back and forth across the kitchen claws. I think I got like an hour of sleep.
Yeah. And didn't he like pee on someone or something?
I think it's, I'm sure he peed on somebody. He was always doing that.
I vaguely, it wasn't me, but I think I vaguely remember that.
He was a wiener dog. What do you expect?
Yeah.
So that was one. And then the ending of the fountain, when the fountain ends, the credits roll, and everyone in the collect theaters goes, "What?" And we're sitting there laughing about it. It was great.
Oh yeah.
Somewhat related. I this last year I saw the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. I would recommend if you want to watch something absolutely insane. And when the movie ended, the one guy in the theater just stood up and goes, "I am so done with this movie." And it's like it was fantastic.
Oh man. All right, let's move on. Worst movie you've seen with others. Worst movie. Let's get it out.
How many others does it have to be? Can it just be one other? Because
it could be one other.
Okay, because the worst movie I've ever seen, I saw this year, and it was called The King's Daughter, starring Pierce Brosnan. And let me tell you about The King's Daughter. If you have not had the gross misfortune of watching it yourself, it is available on Amazon Prime, so feel free to subject yourself to almost 2 hours of evil torture. So the first thing you should know about The King's Daughter is it was recorded 7 years before it was released. It was completed 7 years before it was released because no one wanted to release it. They finally released the movie, which I believe had a budget of about $80 million, and the movie made less than $1 million in the United States box office.
Wow.
So one of the things about this movie. Pierce Brosnan plays King Louis XIV. Pierce Brosnan plays King Louis XIV. Let me say that again. Pierce Brosnan plays King Louis XIV with an English accent the whole time. Like, I'm just being myself. Whatever, guys. I've got to wait on.
He's got to phone it in. Got to pay the bills. You know what I'm saying?
So he wants to have eternal life. So he steals a mermaid, because he's going to take her soul so he can have his life force so he can live forever. What? But then his daughter becomes friends with the mermaid and helps the mermaid escape. So he chases the mermaid down. The Three Musketeers show up for some reason. A direct line from the movie, one of them is holding a musket on top of this cliff, shooting down to the ocean, and he says, "I have a clear shot." No, you do not. You have a musket. It is the 1400s. You do not have a clear shot. Put the mermaid in the water. Oh, and then the end, they find Atlantis for some reason.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not making any of this up. This is a real thing. When I told my coworkers about this, they went, "This is another joke, right, Rob? This isn't real." And I said, "I wish it had been a joke and not real." But no, it is real.
All
Based on a
right.
true
Oh,
story.
man. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
probably.
So by far the worst movie I have ever seen was came out in 2013 by the name of Upstream Color. And Ryan and I watched it together. Jay, you might have been there, but
I don't think so.
okay. But we were actually excited to watch this movie because it was done by the guy that directed and wrote Primer.
Which is an excellent time
And
travel.
if you remember Primer,
Yeah.
Primer was like excellent time travel movie. I think the budget was like 15 grand for this entire movie. Like, you know, it's like filmed in the guy's house and all that stuff. So we're like, whatever this guy does, it's got to be great, right? No, turns out to be the worst movie ever made. So let me I'm just going to read the description off of IMDb.
Yeah.
Because this will make as much sense as the movie itself does. Here's the synopsis. It says a man and woman are drawn together, entangled in the life cycle of an ageless organism. Identity becomes an illusion as they struggle to assemble the loose fragments of their wrecked lives. Like literally the movie makes no sense. Like literally, like every now and then they like randomly cut to like this stream with like there's literally like pieces of color working in it. At the end, you find out it's like this random animal that's bleeding, but you don't really know how it's connected to the two people living in normal everyday life. They sort of like each other, but then they can't remember who they are. It was like it literally made no sense.
And on top of which, like it's, you know how when a director has something that's successful, then they make their second movie and you get to see why the director thinks the movie was successful. And because the first movie was so like intertwined and intense and like you had to follow streams of thought, he thought, what if we take that concept and do it many times more complex, and that's going to be so much better. And it wasn't at all.
No, at all. And I mean, like I'm all for the thinker movie. I'm all for like the heavy psychological. I mean, you just referenced The Fountain. You know, no, this was by far the worst. And I remember when it was done, we literally sat there because we watched it in my basement. We literally sat there and we're like, that was really bad. And we just sat there and basked in the terribleness of that movie. So that's it. Upstream Color.
All right, who else has got one?
My answer has stayed the same since college. Those are, I think, Ryan. I think out of all the people here, you were the only one that was there for it. But Perfect Strangers, it was called, is still my answer.
Yeah.
Were you there, Dave?
No, I've heard the legend.
Yes, this was the movie. Yes.
So we went to I don't know. I think it was Hollywood Video. I think somebody in our group was thinking this movie was a different movie.
Yeah.
I think it had a similar name or something. So we got it. It was a Sam Neill movie.
Yes.
So Jurassic Park, Sam Neill. So it's got to be good, right? Apparently Jurassic Park is the only good movie this guy's ever done. But anyway, like, so this story is okay. So this lady meets this guy in a bar. They go back to his boathouse thing, and then their date gets weird. So then she's trying to get away, and then she thinks he's attacking him, and he's just letting her out, and she stabs him, and he dies. And then they're shipwrecked and they're on or something, or they're back at his place or something like that. And then she keeps him in the freezer. But then she starts having a relationship with him somehow.
Oh, is this what you were talking about?
This is the one I was talking about before you came on.
There's a lot of
started
men
recording.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember what it was called.
He's like there, but his body's in the freezer. And then it's like she's okay. This is the movie that we were like, we only kept watching it because it had to get better. Like that's the only reason we kept watching. It's like it can't get worse. It can only get better.
And it kept getting
just
worse.
to almost justify the fact that we've kept watching it as long as we have. It only got worse. It was amazing. And then like it ends with like this other guy shows up, so she decides to marry him because she's pregnant with the dead guy's kid.
Yes. And he was in the freezer the whole time.
That's some talent by that dead guy.
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you. Because
Oh.
I was having trouble remembering what it was called. That's great.
Yeah. Yep.
So this is I already gave an answer, but I just need to know: has anyone else seen the movie Mother! Exclamation point? Because I watched that also recently, and that I think qualifies here. It is like an allegory about I guess it's supposed to be the Bible. It's directed by Darren Aronofsky, and it has so Ed Harris is in it as part of the Godhead, I guess. And then a whole bunch of other people are in it. Jennifer Lawrence is the main character. And you would think with all these people in it, this would be like a really good movie. And like I understood some of the allegory stuff in it, but it is absolutely crazy bananas. At one point, there was an entire war happening in their house. And at another point, they're actually eating the baby that's supposed to represent Jesus. Like I can't even tell you how insane this movie is. You have to see it for yourself. But Mother is another recommendation for me to watch, or don't if you value your life.
Or don't.
I want to hear what Abby has to say.
I have nothing intelligent to say about this movie, but I saw Trolls in theaters. Not my choice. But that was the worst movie I've ever seen in my life.
The animated Trolls, like the new one.
Yeah.
Jay forced you to go to the movie with him to see. Oh man.
Abby, I just have to say I've seen Trolls probably about 30 times.
Oh no.
With my children. So yeah, pity me.
All right.
I was gonna say it's better. Trolls is better than some of the animated stuff that's out there now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jay, what do you got?
The one that sticks to my mind, or sticks out my mind, is the Zack Snyder cut. Sorry, probably Battlefield Earth.
Oh,
We got to go
man.
see that one.
Ooh, he's reaching back in the vault for that one.
Yeah, that
Okay,
was-
who here owns Battlefield Earth?
I was gonna say
It's one of my. It's a bad movie, and I love it flat out.
it's awful, man.
It's terrible. I can't believe we wasted money.
We actually went and saw it in theaters because
Wow.
there was like before we knew, you could get reviews before it came out,
Yeah.
and of course we knew a little bit of the story. Of course, John Travolta was big at the time, and so we're like, let's check this out. My dad took us, and it was awful.
And it turned out that this whole movie was like an allegory of Scientology.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Which is even more insane. Because someone believed that what was happening on the screen like actually happened,
Mm-hmm.
which adds a whole new level of insanity to it.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Movies you watched most as a kid. What was the movies you went back to over and over and over again when you were a kid? What did you have?
Yeah. So back in the day, our parents recorded, how it was back in the day where you get your recorded movies off of like TV on like VHS.
Yeah.
So my parents had this lineup of like VHS tapes with like scribbles on it on what was actually there. And the things that came up the most for us was the original Star Wars trilogy.
Yep.
And Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the ones that we watched like all the time.
Indiana Jones is my favorite 3-movie series that has ever existed.
Yeah. Like
That's a later question. Save that.
I remember, I actually remember my dad wouldn't let us watch Temple of Doom.
Yes.
At first, because of especially the whole like burning heart thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so we got to watch the Indiana Jones movies, and then a lot of the Star Wars movies that way as well. So those are the ones I remember.
Yeah, for me, also Star Wars, but specifically The Empire Strikes Back. I watched that movie over and over and over as a kid. I just loved this. Still my favorite Star Wars movie to this day. I think it's the best Star Wars movie. My very biased opinion. And then I also watched The Princess Bride so many times that when I was 7, this actually happened. My dad said, "Rob, there are people coming over tonight who have not seen The Princess Bride. Can you please not say every line before it happens?"
Yep.
I mean, if you're going like way back to when we were real little kids, I remember watching Land Before Time. Like
Oh,
each
yeah.
one, each time a new one came out, you know, I was like, I want to go watch, you know, or I want to see that. And I forget.
Come on, if we're going all the way back, man, everyone that saw that movie when they were kids cried.
Yeah,
Yeah.
First
I
one.
was sad.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I won a Littlefoot stuffed animal with an art project that I turned into like Boss Cops or something.
Mhm.
And I still have this. I still have this stuffed animal somewhere.
On his
Yeah.
bed.
Yeah.
Are they still making Land Before Time movies? That they're like at like 27 or something now?
Maybe. I don't know.
Fair question.
Is that all 27? Weren't they like
Maybe
13
more.
when we were kids or something? Probably that's it.
Abby, what'd you watch as a kid?
So I feel like, I mean, maybe this is weird. I watched really old movies like Sound of Music, South
Okay.
Pacific, like the really old musicals and stuff like that over and
Mhm.
over again. So yeah, I have a lot of musicals in my head and also tons and tons of Disney movies. Like
Okay.
the
Mhm.
90s Disney movies,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Little Mermaid was probably my favorite. And maybe Beauty and the Beast as well. I had Little Mermaid sheets. So yeah, for me, like Disney, 1990s Disney is just like prime. That's like my childhood.
Yeah, the Sound of Music was my mom's favorite movie, and I was forced to watch it so many times that I developed the probably heretical belief that Mary Poppins and the Sound of Music are two of the worst movies of all time, and Julie Andrews is an absolute
Oh
emotional
man,
terrorist.
Mary Poppins. I have seen Mary Poppins so many times. When the new one came out, I cried.
Mm,
Like it was
uh,
emotional.
so for the
I don't like
record,
the
on the land
Princess
on the
Diaries
land
either.
before
Sorry, Julie.
on the land before time,
Uh-huh.
there were 14 made total,
Wow.
and the last one came out in 2016.
Okay. All right.
At some point, we're gonna have to do a complete Land Before Time rundown. We have to watch all of them and talk about them on the podcast.
Steve,
That's,
what'd you watch?
All right, quick list. So the movies we found ourselves renting like often, like a lot, like
Mhm.
The Rocketeer.
Mm,
Oh yeah.
There was an old movie called Shipwrecked. It was like a
mm.
91 movie, like Disney. It's actually pretty good. It stood
Oh,
the
yeah,
test
I know
of
what you're
time.
talking about. Yeah.
Okay, don't judge me. The Super Mario Brothers movie,
Nice.
which I recently bought because I was like, oh, this is great, and I watched it again.
Yeah.
Don't watch it.
It's not great.
uh,
But I think the movies I saw the most were either the original Superman movies, and Top Gun.
Mm.
That was my
Oh.
grandpa's favorite movie, so we watched it together all the
okay,
time.
yeah, that's great.
So
yeah.
as a kid, for me, at home, the movie I watched the most was D2, The Mighty Ducks.
Oh yeah,
I forgot about
yeah.
that.
That
Mighty
one
Duck-
was
Mighty
like, I
Ducks was
watched
good.
that all the time. I wore that movie out. And then we spent a lot of summers at my grandparents' house, and they would do the whole, like, they'd get the free week of like the premium channels and would record all the movies that they saw. And so they had the VHSs on there. And the one we watched the most when we were over there was Sister Act.
That is such a good one.
Sister Act.
Yeah.
Sister Act. Yeah. Whoopi
Nice.
Goldberg and the nuns, man.
Nice.
Uh-huh. You never know. You never know what it's going to be.
That's right.
Yes. Okay. All right. That was a good one. I like that one. So let's move on to this one. We've got time for maybe two more. So look quickly, like, what is your best or favorite film franchise? What do you think is all time your favorite film franchise?
Favorite
Let's say at
film
least
franchise.
at least three movies.
Best
So I'm gonna
film
go with
franchise.
the Lord of the Rings
Mm.
series, and we're not gonna include the Hobbit in that because we're not. So the first three Lord of the Rings movies,
Nice.
Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, and Return of the King. Those three movies are, in my opinion, I don't know if it could have been done better.
Mhm.
Translating the work in the books into those movies.
That's an excellent choice. That's an
For
excellent
me,
choice. I like
it's,
that.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I had the first book before Harry Potter was famous. Like it was like
Mhm.
I grew up with it, and then I think they did good with the movies. Like I feel like so many times movies are disappointing after
Yeah.
a book series like that, and I just feel like of a book to movie series, they did an amazing job.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that for sure. It captured the magic of it, I
Yes.
think, really well.
And the music, it's just the whole thing is just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
I mean, there's so many, but for me, I'd probably have to say Star Wars, even though they're trying to ruin it. I mean, like David said before, like we watched like the original trilogy so many times as kids. You know,
Yeah.
like I still think like Darth Vader is one of the coolest bad guys ever. You know, when you hear the score, the Star Wars score start playing, like the hair on the back of my neck still stands up.
Yeah.
And you know, even though the newest ones aren't what I hope they would be, you know, I mean, I read some of the books, you know, both old canon and new canon after Disney bought it. I mean, like even the TV shows that they have, like Obi-Wan, I thought was really good. So like, I really like that type of stuff. So Star Wars is it for me for sure.
Yeah.
I would not claim this is the best franchise by any means, but I would say my favorite has probably been the Mission Impossible franchise.
Yeah. That's there.
They keep it good and interesting and fun and exciting and I would say I enjoy that more than the James Bond franchise. Even though
Okay.
there we go.
All right. Interesting.
Yeah. This is I find this to be a really tough one. I have a couple that pop into my mind, so I'm really having a hard time landing on like favorite. Best is really hard. Best is even really hard too, because there's very few that really hold up really well over time.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the hard parts. But I mean, a couple that pop to mind right away is of course the Dark Knight trilogy that Nolan did. Of course, you can't have a podcast without mentioning Nolan at least a couple times.
Yeah.
So that's really good. A couple others that kind of stand out to me are like the Riddick trilogy.
Yeah.
So if you guys are familiar with those kind of stand out a little bit. But yeah, I'd say, I mean, even like some of the Star Trek films, like I wouldn't classify that as best by any stretch of the imagination, but like in terms of favorite, like ones that like the First Contact and all that, like that, those are some classic ones there.
Yeah. I'm going to go with, I think, one that I just think is very, very steady the whole way through, and really changed how the genre was done. And I'm going to go with the Bourne films.
Oh yeah.
They really did revolutionize what a spy movie is and what a spy movie looks like. It changed Bond. It really did a lot to reinvigorate the Mission Impossible franchise on their second life. And I just think,
because you still think Mission Impossible 2 is a legitimate movie.
I know. This discussion's been going on for 15 years, and
it's still going. It's a load of junk.
I still maintain it has.
You guys want to see us throw down? Mission Impossible 2 is not a good movie. Period.
Come on, who's better than John Woo, man?
John Woo ruined Mission Impossible.
Ruined it. Doves were killed. I mean, even slow-mo was ruined in that movie. Come on.
That is the dark spot on the best franchise.
Yeah, that's it. It was awful.
Consistency.
Awful.
Bourne franchise. That's what I got for that. All right, so let's wrap up with kind of the current state of the two big comic book franchises, DC and Marvel. Both of them, for entirely different reasons, are at kind of crossroads. With DC, you have the changeover at the top at Discovery, and just kind of the run of uneven films that they've had. With the MCU, you have a lot of their characters gone, and some of their recent movies haven't done quite as well as they were hoping for. So let's start with DC. Give me a couple of ideas. What would you do to fix DC?
So here's how you fix DC. This isn't an idea. This is how you fix it.
Okay. Let's hear it.
Number one
Mm-hmm.
is you make Superman Superman.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Here, this is the number one reason why DC films have not worked, and it's because they refuse to make Superman actually be Superman.
Mm.
The character Superman was designed and written as a hero that has the ability and scope to save everyone, that his character is truly good. And the way that they are writing right now is they refuse to write a character that is truly good because they are good. And because of their refusal to do that, it ruins every other character in the DC universe. It literally cascades down from Superman. So that's it. Number one, you have to get Superman right. If you don't get Superman right, it doesn't matter about everybody else. And I think that's actually part of it, is that you don't have to, every character does not have to have a shady past and dad issues in order to be a good superhero movie. So for me, that's how you fix it. You fix Superman, the rest kind of all falls into place. I could go on and on about that, but I'll hold off there because I feel like Steve's getting ready to jump on this bandwagon.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's like how to put it all into. Yeah, I feel like DC wanted to be different from Marvel, which I felt like they didn't have to worry about that. I think the focus didn't have to try to be edgy. They didn't have to try to be Superman, but different. They just do Superman as it is. Don't try to make him a anti-hero or something like that. It's just kind of, it was just like, it was the wrong tone to start off with, but then they keep trying to self-correct by being like, oh, people don't like this, so we're going to do this. And just kind of like, I feel like they're just throwing darts in the dark. And it just, it's, I don't know who's in charge, but it's like, they just keep making mistake after mistake. And every once in a while they get something right. And then they just can't figure things out. It's just, but yeah, I think it was like, they went for this dark, edgy, trying to deconstruct Superman thing. And it was a wrong place to start. But now I really don't like the fact that they just, all these movies are going to be separate from each other. Like there's no consistency. I think the beauty of Marvel, what Marvel has done is like, it all ties together. Like it's all one universe. And they've managed to pull it off where you can have your quirky heroes, you can have your serious heroes, but they can sometimes all like come together and it all works, where it's like DC just could not pull that off. And I just wish they could. I wish they would utilize the multiverse more. I think they're trying to start doing that now. I think that would have solved a lot of the problems and like corrected a lot of stuff that they've made mistakes on the way. But yeah, they're here now, but I just wish that they would try again and just get back to what people actually really like about the characters, not try to appeal to people who don't really care about the characters as much. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, now, before I say this, I will say that the Robert Pattinson Batman was much better than I thought. But I'm kind of tired of Batman. Like I waited to see that one until it was at a theater. So I'm like, I don't want to go watch another Batman movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I know like the Dark Knight trilogy was pretty good, but yeah. And you have to write better than like, oh, your mom's name is Martha too. Now we're best friends. So that kind of writing is not very helpful. It's kind of like, in Star Wars when they said, and somehow Palpatine lived, and you're like, that's the best you got after all these years. But yeah, I would say I don't know. I agree with what you guys are saying. But at the same time, things like Suicide Squad, like when that movie first came out, like the previews for it were much different than the actual movie. Like the previews for it were a much darker movie. And actually, like, I thought it looked good. And then when you go see the movie, you're like, this is like a bubblegum pop movie. This is not at all what was advertised. So yeah, I agree with you guys. They just need to get back to what made them good and stop trying to appeal to everybody. But at the same time, the Marvel movies, I've stopped watching those. Like they've got so convoluted, and I don't know what phase of their program they're on. I don't know the orders of the movies anymore. There's just like DC with Batman, there's like 700 Spider-Man movies. I'm just so like, I've stopped. I don't even watch their shows on Disney Plus. Like I'm like completely like there's too much going on. All the phases.
Yeah, saturation is a real problem.
Yeah,
for sure.
and so I'm just like I can't keep up anymore. So I'm just not gonna watch anymore.
I feel like with Marvel, since you brought up Marvel, I feel like they've been trying to get the second generation started and just things haven't worked out. Like they kind of were trying to get, okay, Spider-Man's going to be our person to kind of lead this new second wave or whatever. And then that, had its drama issues that wasn't playing out. And then tried Captain Marvel, and that was like just a kind of a flat character that people didn't care about. And then it's like they can't find the thing to kind of spark and just kind of like be the flagship or whatever. I don't know. It's like the first generation of superheroes they use like were the great ones, and now they're like, okay, what obscure things heroes can we use now? It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's the piece about saturation that's tough, right? Because if they had just wrapped it up after Endgame and actually took a break of some kind, whoever they brought after that, there would be a more of a longing for. Because now all you long for is the old characters, like the original, like how many times you look back and be like, if Iron Man was doing this would have been more fun and more stuff would have gotten blown up, right? I mean, like it was just is the way it is. So yeah, but going back to fixing DC real quick. So one of the things about DC that I think has been highlighted here, specifically talking about movies, right? Your leadership matters at your movie company. Like we don't get to talk about the production companies and the executive producers a whole lot when we talk about movies, because for most of us that watch, we have no idea who they are, what they're doing. But this is a perfect example of like the people that you never see, how important they really are.
Yeah.
Because when you try to build a cohesive story and it just is, it's a shotgun approach, or Steve talked about throwing darts, because someone's throwing those darts, and it's the people in those production meetings and in those executive rooms that are like, people are just going to watch this, and the reality is no, they're not. You have to do it. So I saw DC just hired, I believe it was James Wan to kind of be their guy to do it. Again, it's got to start with Superman, and you've got to set the tone, right? You're launching, if you're starting over, you're going to launch, with the new merger between Warner Brothers and Discovery, and you're launch something new. You're launching something new into a world that was very different than it was even 5, 6, 7 years ago. Yeah. And, if the executives of Warner Brothers are watching the Film for Fans podcast, because I know that they are,
obviously,
the world needs good characters. Yeah. Like when I say good, I don't mean quality. I mean like characters that have a sense of morality, a sense of justice, a sense of like right and wrong. And those people want those things because it's actually what draws us in.
See, what's funny about that, we've been talking about movies this whole time. The DC character I feel like most epitomizes what you just said, and the DC character I probably enjoyed the most in any media was the Green Arrow. And that was a TV show.
Yeah.
So they weren't able to like translate that over to a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think there is potential for them to tell a good story, but they're really struggling with it in the movie format for some reason.
Yeah.
My final idea to fix DC, just pitching this idea out to you guys.
All right.
A Joker sequel, but make it a musical and have Lady Gaga star as Harley Quinn.
Wow. I'd go see it.
We might see that come to fruition. I don't know.
Feeling some vibes there.
Yeah.
If they're listening to this podcast, that will happen.
There you go.
I'll only like that if Morbius shows up, says it's Morbin time, and then they all
I think from my standpoint, I think DC needs to re-familiarize themselves with their characters and who their characters actually are. And secondly, their entire production seems to be behind. They are always behind. They were behind in trying to create some sort of narrative arc. Then they're behind and constantly reactionary and behind. Look ahead. Take a look at the landscape of where films are now, project where it's going, develop in that way. Stop being both behind the times and reactionary, because anytime you do that, it just looks like a knockoff. It just looks like everyone looks at your movie and says, you're doing this because of Marvel, you're doing this because of this, and it will not let their film stand on their own. They just won't, because it's just obvious that that's what's happening. Yeah, and for the MCU, they need a break. You know, they have yet to prove that any of these secondary characters are capable of leading the franchise forward, and I don't see that that's going to happen. And as much as they're enjoying their run with Disney Plus and having all these TV shows, they really risk getting to the point where everyone just says, there's too much stuff that I need to keep up with in order to follow this franchise. I'm just giving up. And they are in real danger of costing themselves. So they need to shut it down. They need to shut it down and take a break. Yeah. All right. So let's end the podcast like this. Give us a recommendation of a movie you've seen recently. What's something you've seen that you recommend that we see?
Not that they're good by any means, but Abby and I just watched the old Tomb Raider movies, and it was, I mean, like I said,
you know, the Angelina Jolie ones.
Yeah, they're actually pretty terrible movies, but it brought back some, you know, like fond memories of just like the old Tomb Raider games with,
oh man,
you know, it was just
bad graphics
to watch.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for entertaining movies that are terrible, the old Lara Croft movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll take you back to like the 90s special effects and stuff, and you'll be like, wow, we thought this was
we thought this was good at the time.
Well, it was good at the time. That's the
right. It was good at the time, but the first one's better than the second one for sure. The second one has terrible story and everything, but it was entertaining.
Yeah,
took me back.
I will recommend a few movies here that I've seen in the theater. One of the things that I've enjoyed the most about this podcast is the impetus to go out to the theater often. And Ryan and I both have the Regal subscription, so we're able to do that without it costing us $1 billion, which is great. But like AMC has one of those, or a few other movie chains that have them as well. But some movies I saw in the movie theater over the last year that I would recommend: Nightmare Alley, Guillermo del Toro. Bradley Cooper is the star of this movie. It's a really good period piece, and it was released in color and in black and white. And I would recommend, if you have a way to watch it in black and white, watch it in black and white. It just adds something to it, in my opinion. I previously mentioned Everything Everywhere All at Once. If you want to watch something that's absolutely insane, watch that movie. You will not regret it. You'll be questioning what you're watching from the beginning of the movie until the end of the movie, but you'll like it and you'll laugh. It's very funny. I would also recommend the movie Nope, which just came out, directed by Jordan Peele. I really enjoy thriller / horror. I would say this is more thriller based than like horror. There are some scary things in it, but I think it's really good. And there are a couple different storylines that come into the movie as you're watching it. And then one more in that genre that came out recently is The Black Phone, starring Ethan Hawke. I would recommend that one as well. Boy gets kidnapped and he starts getting phone calls in the room where he's being held captive by the other kids who had been kidnapped in the same place, and they help him to escape. So those are 4 that I've seen in the theater. And if you have a chance, just go to the theater. I don't know when this is going to be released, but September 3rd, which is in a couple days, is going to be National Movie Day, they're calling it.
$3.
Yep, and it's $3 movie tickets. There's a whole bunch of participating theaters, so if you look that up, that'd be a good time to go watch something if you can in the theater.
Yeah. So in terms of recent stuff, I'd say again, getting to the theaters, which right on, Rob. The one recently to recommend is, and it seems like everybody's seen it already, is the Top Gun Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's simple, it's classic, it's, you know, it's smooth. Kaczynski and his crew do such an amazing job of the cinematography in that movie. I mean, when they're in the planes, you feel like you're in the planes. There's a very visceral experience being in the theater with that movie. The end gets a little cheesy, you know, when he fires up that F-16, it's been sitting there for probably, you know, how many years, and it like does it, and he fights like a F-22 with it or whatever, and it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But it's just, it you know, it's a good feel good ending. And just goes to prove that you actually can do the sequel all those years later. And it's just a fun theater experience. So, and bonus on that one is me and my wife went, which doesn't usually ever happen, but we both liked it, and that doesn't always happen. So that's got to be a winner.
Yeah, that movie is probably one of the most pleasant surprises I've ever had in a movie theater. I was not expecting it to be anywhere near as good as it ended up being.
Yeah, I figured Kaczynski was going to do a good job because he's done it before with like Tron and Oblivion and stuff, but it was solid.
Yeah.
Dixon took mine. I was going to say Top Gun Maverick. And I also was worried, you know, after all these years, but they nailed like what a sequel should be. Like it was, you know, I feel like they even completed like character arcs. Like it was like such a good continuation from the old one, and just, yeah, it's like, but you don't have to love the old movie to love like the new one. And just like, this is, everybody loves this movie for good reason. Yeah. But since Dixon took mine, I don't really have any others. I haven't seen it recently, but I don't think Brian has ever mentioned this movie on the podcast, so I'm just going to do it. But The Man Who Knew Too Little is a very underrated Bill Murray movie. So if you have not seen the movie, you should.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say my Superman movies that I made. If Ryan includes the links in the notes or whatever, feel free to watch those.
See the Steve Glerum cut of the Superman movies.
All right.
I will be posting the links in the show notes.
You don't have to watch the first one because it's more like the origin and stuff like that, which most people know the origin or the old movie, you know, that stuff. But the second one is like the main one, just so you know.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
Abby, do you have one?
Well, the movie I watched most recently, I watched with a friend and her kids. So it was Encanto. And I have been hearing my nieces and nephews and many other children singing these songs for a long time. And so I don't know, I had preconceived notions about it, but I actually loved it. So I don't know, I thought it was really endearing. I loved how it told the story of a migrant family, which I thought was a different story to tell, from a different kind of perspective, which I thought was really cool. So yeah, I really liked it. I mean,
my daughter's always singing songs from that movie, but I don't like to talk about it.
And he had to get one of those jokes in on the podcast.
I was gonna say, dad joke.
I'm gonna go with on Netflix right now, Blade Runner 2049. Beautiful.
That's not new, but okay.
It's not new. It doesn't have to be.
No.
And Blade Runner 2049, you got to see it. It's on Netflix. The original Blade Runner's on there too. It's harder to get into later because it's, you know, it was groundbreaking when it came out, but it's not as groundbreaking anymore. But 2049 is just such an amazing movie, and it like Top Gun Maverick, it does incredible justice to a continuation of a story, and it's just very, very well done. The story, you know, bears out over a length of time, and you really get to see some great character development, and it is really fantastic.
It's probably the least awful recent Jared Leto performance. So also got that going for it,
True,
which would
and
be
you get
interesting.
and you get a Dave Bautista appearance as well.
Yeah. All right, guys. That's it. Thank you so much for helping us.
100. You guys did it.
100th episode of Film for Fans podcast. So thank you for each and every one of you. This is the time where I tell you, go to filmforfans.com, rate, subscribe, tell your friends, do all the things that every podcast tells you to do and nobody does. Do all of them just this once. Anyway, thank you to all the guests, and have a great night. And until the next time, enjoy the movies.